Hilchis Nizkei Mamon Perik Shnei Moser. Now the first 11 prokim of Nizkei Mamon, the Rambam discusses the dinim of share. The Rambam starts Kol Nefesh Chaya Shebirshus Shel Adam, and he speaks about the dini Azeka. So there was the Karen and the Shein and the Regel, the Toldas of Karen, Shein and Regel, and then there was also a share Shehizik Adam and a share Shaharag Adam, various different dinim, but all dinim of share. The next two prokim, Yud Beis and Yud Gimel, the Rambam discusses the halachas of Beir. And then in the 14th perik, so the Rambam discusses the halachas of Eish. Perik Shnei Moser, HaChoifer Beir B'Shus HaRabim, V'nafel L'Teiche Sher Eichamer Umes, Afilo Hoya Beir Moli Gize Shel Tzemer U'Kiyetzvem. So therefore, normally when you say a share falls into a bear, so the damage is from the bank, because it fell in, it banged itself, so therefore it hurt itself from the bank. The chiddush over here is that even if it doesn't hurt himself from the bank, because there was giza shel tzemer, there was soft, and Mamela he hurts himself from the hevel, from the air that's in the bear, the bad air which he caused. So it's like he created a bear, he made a bear, and then from the bear it became hevel ra, and then behem got nizak. Nevertheless, he's also chayiv. That's the chiddush. Afilo haya bear moli giza shel tzemer u'kiyetzebem is arei bal haber chayiv l'shalom nezik shalom. Shenema, the pasuk says bal haber yishalom. So he was referred as Baal HaBear. He doesn't own the bear, he dug the bear. But since he dug the bear, he's considered Baal HaBear. Ve'echad sher v'chamer ishar mina behema chaya ve'ev, l'namar sher v'chamer ela beheva. But be'emes, any Baal Chai that falls into the bear, so the Baal HaBear is chayv. Now, echad ha'chefer bear b'shus harabim, that the bear was actually dug in the karka of the Rishus harabim. Oy ha'chefer bear b'shusei upsachi l'shus harabim. In other words, the bear itself was like on an angle. He dug the bear into his rishus, but the pesach of the bear, the opening of the bear, was in rishus harabim. A pesach rishus chavere, or the opening of the bear to the rishus harabim. In other words, the actual space of the bear itself, was in his rishus. But on the other end, the opening of the bear, the place where you could fall into the bear, was either in the rishus harabim or in rishus chavere. Oy, another option, shechafar u pesach rishusei. He dug the bear b'rishusei, and it is also the Pesach of the bear was Birshusei. Abelepel is Hifker Rishusei. He went ahead and it was Mafka the Rishus. So now that area becomes an area which the Bnei Rishus Harabim could use. V'lei Hifker Beiri, but the bear is still his. So when he dug the bear, over here by the Rambam's Negeh, when a person digs the bear, there could be two reasons why you're chayiv for a bear. Either you're chayiv for the bear because you dug the bear, so even though the bear was never yours, but you dug the bear, and when you dug the bear, you created a takola for the Bnei Rishus Harabim or for someone else. So that's the maaseh that's mechayiv because you dug the bear and you made the takola. Or when a person digs a bear, and while he's digging the bear, there was no takola, because lepel he dug the bear b'rshusei, was chafrei b'rshusei, and it was also he opened it b'rshusei. But so now he goes ahead and he's mafker his rishus. So right now his bear is a takola, but when he dug it, it's not a takola. So the Rambam Shita is that if the bear is still his, if the bear is actually his, so in other words, Hifker Rishusei, V'lei Hifker Beirei, so the Baal HaBear is Chayiv, even though B'shas at digging, he didn't do a takola, but right now he owns a bear, and that bear is a takola, so therefore he's Chayiv. Masha'enken, if it'll be, the Rambam holds Hifker Rishusei U Beirei, so Lepel, he was gave him a takola for Rishus Harabim, because Lepel, he dug a bear in his Rishus. At that point in time, there was no takola, and now he was mafker Rishusei Ubeirei. So Lepel, there's a bear in Rishus Harabim. But he never dug the bear in the Rishus Harabim, and he also doesn't own the bear in the Rishus Harabim. He was just a grumma that there should be a bear in Rishus Harabim. B'chi Hagam, the Shittas Harabim is that he's potter. Rashi, the Rambam brings from the Meisha, Rashi holds that you are chayiv. Because Lepel, the act that you were hifker Rishusei Ubeirei, that in itself was creating a takola. Whereas the mere fact that you were hifker Rishusei Ubeirei, that was a takola. But the Rambam holds not like that. The Rambam holds that if hifker Rishusei Hifker Beirei, so the bear is yours, so then you're chayiv. Masha'enken, if hifker Rishusei Ubeirei, then you're not chayiv. Let's read the halacha again. Halacha beis. Echad ha'chefer bear b'Rishus Harabim. Ha'chefer bear b'Rishusei upsachel Rishus Harabim. So at that point in time, b'shas the chfira, it was a takola. A pasach l'Rishus Chavere, again, it was a takola for Chavere. Eisha chafar upasach l'Rishusei. While he was doing it, it was chafar upsachel l'Rishusei, which is not a problem. Aber lepel is hifker reshusei. He went ahead and was mafker reshusei, so that area becomes an area for the rabbin. Aber v'le hifker beirei, so the din is harei zachayev b'nezakav. That is chayev b'nezakav. Avol im hifker reshusei ubeirei. He went ahead and he dug a bear b'reshusei, and then he was mafker reshusei ubeirei. A shehifker beirei shebereshusei a higdishei. In this case, a case where the reshus is still his, but he let people go into his reshus. In other words, he owns a reshus. He dug a bear in his reshus, which again he didn't do anything wrong, and now he goes ahead and he was mafker the bear shebereshusei, and now he invites people into his reshus. So lepel, those people are falling into this bear. So lepel, if the bear would have been his, he invites people into his reshus, and they fall into his bear, so he's responsible for them. But since he was hifker beirei, so now he invited people into his reshus, and lepel, there's a bear over there, which he's not responsible for because it's not his. And while he dug it, it was no problem. So in Mela, he's also potter. He's doing something wrong. But lepel, you can't call him the balaber. So the din is hareza potter. Shnemar bal haber yishal. To me, yeshli bailim. He has to be yeshli bailim. Is that hefker? And this is hefker. Ubetchile b'shus chafer. So in order to be a bal haber, you have to be one of two. Either you taka own the bear. That's one option of being bal haber. Or you're a bal haber because lepel you're a bal haber because you dug the bear. Because you dug the bear, even though it was never yours, but you dug the bear. Mashiach, if you didn't dig the bear and you're not a bal haber, so memela you're not responsible for the bear. Now, even though we learned that a person that in order to be chayiv you have to either dig the bear or to be the bal haber. But lepel, once you are the bal haber, so memela at that point in time you're responsible for the hezek, even though you're going to now be mafkir the bear, or you're going to be magdish the bear, it's not going to help. Whereas if you were magdish the bear before the bear became a din of a bear, so memela even though lepel sofkosov you're responsible, was hifker shusei v'hifker beire together, but nevertheless you're potter because lepel you never became the bal haber. When you dug the bear there was no takola, and now when it is a takola you didn't dig it. Masha'enkin if l'mashal hifker reshusei v'le hifker beir. So the bear is his, and then at that point in time he has a chiv l'malese. So now he's going to go ahead and be mafka the bear. So over here we say that since lepel it was his, and at that point in time he had a chiv l'malis haber, so he becomes the bal takola. And the fact that he's going to be mafka the bear is not going to help him. Just like a bear that he digs doesn't help the fact that it's not his. So Aldera is over here. The fact that since he had an obligation to fill up the bear, so the fact that right now he's being mafkir is not going to help him. That's, I think, the next halacha. Halacha gimel. Echad achefer bear, a shenechper me'elav, or the bear was nechper me'elav, and knows whenever something happened, they became a bear. Eshe chafrasi behema yichaya, a berheil v'hu chayv l'malese. Since this bear is in a situation where he is mechuyev l'malese, ele chasese, because it's his, and v'lei asa, so memela is areza chayv b'nezakav. So from then onwards, he becomes chayv b'nezakav. In other words, by the fact that he had a chiv l'malese and lepel he wasn't malese, it has it in as if he dug it. It makes no difference. There's a person owns a bear. He owns a bear, and that bear is a takola. So he owns a bear that whether he dug the bear or he owns a bear because he bought a bear or he got a bear, but lepel he owns a bear which is a takola. If he owns the bear, so he becomes the bala takola. And even if now he doesn't own the bear, because since there was a point that he was the bala takola, and at that point in time he was mechuyev to cover the bear, to fill the bear, so memela he remains the bala takola until he fixes it. Halacha dalet. Echad achoifer eya megala mokim shoyim mechusa. Shenemar ki yiftach ish bear ki yichra. Whether you dig the bear or if there was a bear and you uncovered the bear, so that's also has a din of digging. Now the im kisohu karoi. If there was a bear, even if you dug the bear and lepel you covered the bear karoi. Afal pi shesliya miteche. Eventually, this cover became rotten. And as a result of that, v'nafel l'teichi sher umes is potter. Shenemer v'lei yechasena. When are you chayiv for digging a bear? Only if you didn't cover it. Hoyim kuso, if you covered it with a proper cover. So even though eventually later it became rotten, but lepel at the point in time you covered it, so mele you're potter. Now kiso b'davar sheyochel lamed b'fnei shvarim. It's strong enough that oxen could walk on it. However, ve'ena yochel lamed b'fnei gemalim. It cannot stand on a camel. A camel is too heavy, and memela this cover is not strong enough to hold a camel. And lepeil v'holcho olav gmalim. Gmalim walked on this cover. V'nisroya, and the cover became weaker. And then v'holcho olav shvarim v'noflu bei. So it depends. Im eina gmalim mitzuim beisim makim harize potter. Because lepeil, he made a cover which is roy for gmalim, for shvarim. And lepeil, he wasn't expecting gmalim to be there in order to make the cover shvacher. And therefore he made it roy for shvarim. Lepeil, it was roy for shvarim. It was something unusual that Gemalim came and made it shvacher. He's not responsible for it. However, if Gemalim do go there occasionally, even though very, very occasionally, but not regularly, but they do go occasionally, so then it's a chayv. It's nacham. When a person puts a cover on a bear, even though he dug the bear, he's potter, because the bear, the lapel is covered. Now, if this cover became rotten and later a share falls in, he's also potter. Now, if it's strong enough for shvarim, but it's not strong enough for gemalim, and he went ahead and put the cover on the bear, and gemalim walked there, and as a result of that, the cover became weaker and a share fell into the bear. So it depends. If it's regular for the gemalim to walk there, so then he's responsible for the share that went into the bear. Masha'ekin, if it's completely unusual, that knows the gemalim don't go there, so therefore if Gaal came there, which was completely unusual, so then he's not responsible for the share falling into the bear. Now the Rambam only speaks about the share falling into the bear and the gemalim making the bear weaker. What about if a gomel falls into the bear? If a gomel falls into the bear, what's the din? The Rambam doesn't say. So it's brought down over here from Tesvis, and that by if a gomel falls into the bear, yechayev, even if it's unusual for a gomel to walk here, but since it's possible, so if the gomel falls in, you're chayev. If the gomel causes that the cover should become weaker, and as a result of that, the share fell into the bear, so then it depends how unusual it is for the gomel to come in. Even if it's unusual, but it happens, so then he is responsible. And if it's very unusual, it never happens, so then he's not responsible. But if the gomel actually falls in, so it's brought down from Tesvis that the Rambam doesn't say it, but if the Rambam doesn't speak about what happens if the gomel falls in. If the gomel falls in, since lapel, it wasn't you created the bear, and it wasn't strong enough for gemalim. So even though it's very unusual for a gomel to come, or it doesn't happen, but nevertheless, if the gomel falls in, you're responsible. That's what's brought down here. There's also paskin that like that in Ramah. Halacha hey, hisliya miteiferchei v'nafel beishvarim. Now we learned that if it was a sliya miteichei and v'nafel beishvarim, we learned it was potter. That was what we learned before. That if a person makes a cover, that cover could stand b'fnei shvarim, and lepel was a sliya miteichei, and lepel a share fell in, you're potter. Now if he makes a cover that could stand for shvarim, and lepel, what happened was that gemalim walked on it. Gemalim walked on this cover, and as a result of that, the cover became shvacher, and then a share fell in. So it depends. If it's a place where it's completely not regular for a gomel to come, so then it's considered a noinus. You're not expecting a gomel to come, mainly a potter. Masha'enkin, if it's a place which occasionally a gomel comes, even though it's not regular, but occasionally a gomel comes, so mainly you should have been choishish for the gomel making this cover weaker, and therefore, if the share falls in, lepel yochayv. That's this din. So we had two din. We had a din if the share, if you made a cover and it was a sliya, and then it's potter. And then we had a din that if you made a cover and lepel gemalim walked on top of it, and it's not so unusual. Occasionally, gemalim do walk on it, and as a result of that, the share fell in because the gemalim caused that the cover should be weaker. So then the baal haber is chayv. The baal haber is chayv because he's responsible because he should have been choishish for the gemalim. Now, what happens in a place where he makes a cover, and lepel it was a sliya, but on the other hand, it's a place where gemalim do occasionally walk, and therefore it wasn't really roy for gemalim. And if gemalim would have walked, it could have happened that it should be nisra, it should become weaker, and as a result of that, the share walked in. So he was like a pisheya legabi the problem of the gemalim. But legabi, the problem of Isliya, Bemis is potter. And Lepel, what happened was Isliya. That's the case that the Rambam is talking about. So L'churi, you could think that he's a Tchilasi B'Pshei V'Sefer B'Enes. Lepel, the Rambam paskins that he's potter. The Ravid argues and goes that he's chayiv. Halachei, Hisliya miteichei v'nafel b'shvarim. What happened was it was taka Isliya and nafel b'shvarim. It's aval pisha g'malim mitzuyim shom tamid. Over there, g'malim are mitzuyim shom tamid v'areu pishel l'g'malim. He's a pishel l'g'malim. and Memela, the Gemalim could have fallen in there, and Lepel, the Gemalim could have caused that it should be Nisreya. Aber Heil, Lemach, Moshe Sliya, Naflu, Be'ashvarim, is Ariza Potter, V'chein Kol Kietze Bazeh. Agam, L'chura, the Gemalim could have caused that it should be Hisreya. So the Ravid argues, and the Rambam doesn't say that the Gemalim could have caused that it's Nisreya. The Rambam just says, Hareo Pishel L'Gemalim. In other words, Aval Pisha Gmalim Mitzuyim Shem Tomid Vareu Pishel L'Gmalim. He's a Pishel L'Gmalim, but he wasn't a Pishel L'Shvarim. I L'churi is a Pishel L'Shvarim also. You have to know if every tzir if there's a chash that the Gmalim are going to cause Nisreya. I'm not sure. But I'll call upon him. The Raiva Taka argues. I mean, we had the din of the Rambam, but in Gela Mashal, if a person puts a kaisel which is not really Yochel Lamed Beru, is not a kaisel, a proper kaisel, not a proper door, not a proper kaisel. And Lepel, the behema was chotra v'yotza. So even if it would have been a proper kaisel, the behema anyways would have gone out. In other words, he didn't go out through the door, or to the wall, or through the door. He went out through chotra. He dug an underground tunnel and he went out. And nevertheless, the Rambam said that since he was a pishel legabe going out through the door, so it's considered tchilasi b'pshia. So even though he was chotra, he's chayiv. So we see that the Rambam passes tchilasi b'pshia v'sefer be'enis is chayiv, even though the enis didn't come through the pshia. The enis didn't come through the pshia. So, and over here, the Rambam is passing that he's potter. So you have to know, maybe it could be that over here is taka only a pshia l'gmalim, it's not a pshia l'shvar. I'll call upon him. Halacha vov. Hamoitzi boir, and lepel vikiso, he went ahead and covered the bear, which had nothing to do really with him. And lepel, then vigilo, then he uncovered it. There was an open bear, which whoever opened the bear or dug the bear was responsible for it. Now he went ahead and covered an open bear, and then he uncovered that open bear. So the din is bala bear chayv. There's a svara to say, since you covered it, now you uncovered it. So you're the uncoverer. So we say no. Since the bear was originally open, so the original person, the bala bear, was responsible for it. You covered it is very good. But lapel, when you take away what you did, so it's chayz v'ner, what the original bala bear becomes responsible. V'zeh achrim potter. That's talking about if you only covered it and uncovered it. However, sus may be offered, and then the chaz of the is called offer. You went ahead, not only uncovered, you filled the bear with offer. So now there's no bear. There was no bear. After you filled the bear with offer, there was no bear. So the original bear was no longer there. So now, Zeha Achrin Chayiv, only the last person, the person that filled the bear and now undid it, he's the one that's Chayiv. Shekiva Shesas may be offered. Once he stuffs it with earth, is Nistalik Maisarishan, so there's no bear. It's not sure there's a bear that he covered. There's no bear anymore. And now when he goes ahead and digs this bear, so he's digging a new bear. Halacha Zayin. Bear Shoshnei Shutfim. You have a bear that belongs to two people. Two people are responsible for this bear. And v'avar harishan v'leichiso, the person, and this bear is open, and lepel, he didn't cover it. V'avar harishan v'leichiso. And now Hasheni, the second person, passes this bear, and also v'leichiso, he also didn't cover the bear. So the din is harishan chayiv. The rishin is chayiv. Ad sheyimser dolye l'sheni. In order for the responsibility to become on the second person, is only if the pail, that they would go ahead and get the water with. That would they would use it normally as a cover for the bear as well. That dli was also the cover of the bear. So the rishon is chayiv unless he gave over that dli to the sheni. When he gives over the dli to the sheni that he should go ahead and take water from the bear, so then is nifter harishin, then the first one becomes potter, and v'nischayiv hasheni l'chasesi. Now it becomes the responsibility of the sheni. So we're learning over here that at first when the rishon went by, it was his responsibility, and it still remains his responsibility. And even though the second went by, it sounds like that even though the second went by, but lepel, since it was the rishon's responsibility, the second one is potter, unless the rishon gives over to the second one the dli. So then he's like taking away the responsibility from himself, and now he's giving over the responsibility to the sheni. And now the sheni is the one that's responsible. That's l'chura what we're learning over here. Now we're having another case. Kiso Arishin. The first person walked by the bear, and he covers it. Now, the second one finds it uncovered. Although the first one covered it, so he didn't do anything, everything is right, but the second one found it uncovered. Let's say something happened that it was uncovered. Sliya, whatever happened, it was uncovered. It had nothing to do with the first one. The first one did what he was supposed to do. And Lepel, the second one, finds it uncovered, V'leiki so, and he didn't cover it. So Hasheni Chayev. So now the Sheni is Chayev. Whereas in the case where the Rishon pissed and didn't cover it, so the Rishon is Chayev and the Sheni is Potter. Mashenkin in the case where the Rishon did cover it, and now Lepel, the Sheni, finds it uncovered, so now it's the responsibility of the Sheni. Is Hasheni Chayev. Vad Emasai Hasheni Levadi Chayev. How long will only the Sheni be Chayev? And the Rishon will be Potter because he originally covered the bear. So how long is the Rishon going to remain Potter? Ad Emasai Hasheni Levadi Chayev. At Sheyeda Harishon Shaber Megula. When once the Rishon realizes that the bear is Megula, and also that's not enough for the Rishon to become responsible. Ukidei sheyisker pelim. It has to be enough time that he should hire workers. V'yichris harozim v'yichaseru. In other words, there should be enough time to make a cover. The chol sheyomas b'teich zman zeh is harei Hasheni levadi chayev. So the second one is responsible because the pale, since the bear was uncovered and he passed by the bear, Vaistis he's mechuyev to make sure that the bear is covered. He can't go ahead and start saying how long is it going to take until he makes a cover. He has to stand there and make sure that the bear is covered. Mashenga and the Rishon, which is not there, and he just heard about it, so now it's his responsibility. His responsibility. How long? When does it become his responsibility? When it reaches a time where he could have made a cover. But until that time comes along, so the second halacha is clear that the second person became responsible, and now the first person also becomes responsible when he hears about it, and there's enough time for you to make a cover. The question is only what's shot in the first halacha. I don't really understand. Whereas we have like three halachas. We have a halacha where the Rishon passes by and he doesn't cover it, and then the second one passes by and he also doesn't cover it. So then we say that only the Rishon is chayiv, unless the Rishon gives over to the second one responsibility. So then the Sheni is chayiv and not the Rishon. Certainly the Sheni is chayiv and not the Rishon. So good. So we understand when the Rishon gives over the responsibility to the Sheni, so then the Sheni becomes his responsibility. It becomes his responsibility and not the Rishon's. So therefore, that instant. But l'chura, why isn't the Sheni also responsible? And it's just like we're saying over here, that let's say the Rishon covered it, and then the Sheni walks by and he sees it uncovered. So it becomes his responsibility. And then once the Rishon finds out about it, it becomes his responsibility as well. So in the first case, I don't understand the pshat, the pashut pshat. That when the Rishon, in the first case, when there was Shnei Shutfim, and then the Rishon went ahead and didn't cover it, and then the second one also didn't cover it. So the Chura, why isn't the second one also responsible? In other words, the Rishon was responsible and the second one is responsible. Just like in the case where the second one knows about it, sees it, and he's responsible, and then the Rishon also becomes responsible, even though the Rishon was originally Kiso. So why is the case of, the Mamish the first case, of a Rishon V'lei Kiso, and Hasheni V'lei Kiso, Rishon Chayev, Achayim Sedolu Yilisheni, I don't know. L'chura it's a pashta shayla. Pshat, I don't know what's pshat. Halacha ches. Hamoiser boire l'shemer chayev ben nezakav. Someone gives a shemer the responsibility to watch the bear, so he becomes chayev ben nezakav. V'imosrei l'cheres sheitav v'katan, and he gives it over the responsibility to a cheres sheitav v'katan, is afal b'shayim mechusa. Is harei abaylim chayav v'shaber osil izgalas v'ein bamdas. So therefore, that's not considered a proper shmirah. So in other words, the person has to always know that a cover can get uncovered, and the fact that there's a cheres sheitav v'katan over there, that's not considered a bimkein a shemer. Now, when you read the pashtus of the Rambam, it sounds like haber osil is smalis. So mainly, you have to have always a shemer on a bear. I mean, that's like a new halacha that a bear is not enough to cover it, but you have to have a shemer on a bear, and a cheres sheitav v'katan is not a good shemer. We never learned. There's a din. You have to put a cover on the bear. It doesn't say you have to have a shemer on the bear. So that's why the Mefarshim explained that the pshat is, even though that's not l'chura the pashut pshat, that shahaber osil is galus through the cheres sheitav v'katan ve'elu ein b'mdas to know that if it'll be nizgala, they have to cover it again. So in other words, normally when a person has a bear and he covers it, everything's fine. Mashenkin, if a person has a bear and he gives it over to a shemer, even though it's uncovered, it's also no longer his responsibility. When a person gives over a bear to a cheres sheitav v'katan, so obviously if it's not covered, so it's certainly not a helping. Mashenkin, even if it's covered, by giving over a bear that has a cover to a cheres sheitav v'katan, is worse than not giving it over, because Lepel, these Chereshet V'Kotten are going to go and uncover it, and Memele and Einhem Mem Das, they have no das to know not to uncover it, and not how to cover it. Halacha Tes. Hamechase Boire B'Dolye Shel Chaveri, he took someone else's pail, and he went ahead and he covered his own beard. Ubo Baladli V'Notel Dolye, and he comes and he takes back his dli, is Balaber Chai, because he's not responsible, and his dli, he could take his dli. The fact that the Balaber is using his dli in order to cover it, that's the Baladli is not responsible for that. Halacha Yud. Now the Lashon in the pasuk is ber. So the Ram says Echad Achefer ber. Bear is usually round. It's a round bear. Siach is something like a rectangular type of bear. A ma'ara is also like a squarish type of bear or rectangular bear, but it has a cover on it. A chritz also something which is like a hole in the ground with a cover, but it's not so rectangular like a ma'ara. So these are all different types of holes in the ground. Echad Achefer bear, a siach, a ma'ara, a chritz. So all of these dinim are the same. The responsibility for the bear is the same, whether it's a bear or it's a siach, a ma'ara, chritz. I v'lo menem a bear. So what does the Takatera speak about a bear? Because when a behemoth dies, in order to be responsible for a behemoth dying, it has to be a bear, which is yesh bekedei lahamis, v'kama kedei lahamis, oimek asoret tvachim, and a stam bear is oimek asoret tvachim. So therefore, the Torah speaks about a bear, because the Torah is teaching us that it has to be ke'ein bear, which means that it has kedei lahamis. Aval hoye pachis me'asoret, the pale that had less than 10 tvachim. V'nafel l'teichi sher ishar behemoth chayev ve'ef umes is potter. However, v'im husku, if the share got huzak, is chayev. Because chayev balat hakol and nezek sholem. Because the pill, you need 10 tvachim in order for it to die. But in order to be huzak, we can learn behemshel that even if it's any minimal amount is enough to make a hezek, and therefore if it's huzak, you have to pay for it. Now the Rambam doesn't write what's the din l'moshel if a share falls into a bear that's less than 10 tvachim and it dies, but the pale could have gotten huzak. Do you give the pasuk Lashon Rambam is pachas me'asara is potter. He's potter legamri. He's not only potter for the misa, he's potter legamri. But lepel, there's a deal in b'negei whether or not your chayev, what it would have been had it. In other words, what kind of hezek was roy to happen? Taka wasn't roy to be mess, so you're not chayev for the misa. But are you chayev for the amount of hezek that would have been normal for it to die to get this hezek in that size of the nefila? Halacha Yudalef. Hoya oimek haber tisha umihen tefech echad mayim. So the din is chayev because tefech shel mayim choshev ke'emek shnei tvachim biyabasha. So mele just like 10 tvachim is kedei lahamis is 9 tvachim plus which one of those tvachim are mayim has the din of 10 tvachim. Now hoya omek shmeinu umihem shnei tvachim mayim. Eisha yom ki shiva umihem shleisha tvachim mayim. So over here v'nafel l'teicha sheru ki yetze beumes. So over here the question is, do we say that's klor that 10 tvachim is kedei lahamis? It's klor that 9 tvachim and one of them is mayim is kedei lahamis. But it's not klor of 8 and 2 of them are mayim, or 7 and 3 of them are mayim is kedei lahamis. That's a suffix in Gemara. So memela, so over here ema chayiv and esul l'shalem, because there's a suffix maybe he's not chayiv because it's ein kedei lahamis. But on the other end, tafas hanizik ein mitzim liyodik. Shadvar meilu yesh bem suffix. So since it's a suffix, so that's the Shittas Rambam that Mamon amutul b'suffix. So tfisa helps if there's a suffix, if there's a real suffix, if you're chayiv or not. So tfisa helps. Halacha Yud Beis. Hachefer bear amok asara tvachim, and that's already a mitzvah of a bear which yesh b'kedei lahamis. And now v'hishlim bo'acher v'hishlim yasim, someone else came and added another 10 tvachim. So now it's esrim. Now bo'acher v'hishlim l'shleishim. So the din is kulam chayav. They're all chayav because each one made a bear, each one made a proper bear, and memela lepel, whatever happened as a result of all 3 of them. Now chafer arishin pachas mi'asara afilu tefach. That the first one only made 9. Now ubo achre and v'shlim li'asara, he made it from 9 to 10. Is ben shechafer beitefach, he made a deeper tefach. Eisheigbia binyan al svasi tefach. So memela when the behemoth walks on top of that binyan and then falls down, so the fall is 10 tefachim. Is now Zeh Achron Chayv. So we don't look at the Achron as being a shooter with the Rishon, because since the Achron made now a bear, which the first one made a bear which yesh b'kedei lahazik, and the Achron made a bear which yesh b'kedei lahamis. So even though the Achron's kedei lahamis is the together with the first 9, but Lepel, since he made a new Metzias of a bear, Kedei Lohamas, he's Chayiv. Now, Sosam Tefach Shehesev, Eshe Sosar Tefach Shebona, so he went ahead, he became the Balaber, because Lepel, he made the extra Tefach, so now it's a bear Shel Asara, and Lepel, if anything happens in that bear, he's responsible. He's responsible. So Zeh Achron Chayiv is responsible not only for Misa, he's responsible also for Nezikim, because he becomes the Balaber. Now, what happens if this Achrein, which became the Balaber through adding this extra tefach, either in the depth or in the height, now he took away that extra tefach. So do we say, listen, the only reason why he's the Balaber is because he added the tefach. Now that he took away the tefach, so he becomes Uiz Balaber, so it goes back to become the original Balaber? Or do we say, no, since you became the Balaber, just like we had before when you stuffed the bear, so now you stuff the bear, now you take out the earth, so you already became now you're the Balaber. So Alder is over here. The original bear is not there anymore. The bear that person made, which was 9 tvachim, is no longer there because you now made a bear with 10 tvachim, which is a new bear. And now, Enochanami, you took away that extra tefa that you added, but you remained with that new bear. You know, since this bear became a new bear, so it's your new bear. So mainly you're responsible. That's the suffix. That's what he's saying here. That Sosam Bo Achrin Vishlim Asara, so now, Sosam Tefach Shehesev, if this Achrein, which added the extra Tefach, was Sosam the Tefach Shehesev, the depth, Eshe Sosam Tefach Shebanach, where he took off that extra Tefach that he built in the height, that is a Sofrik, Im Kvar Nistalik Meiser Rishon, so the whole bear is now the new person's bear, and now we're saying, no, you took away your extra piece, so now it goes back to the original bear, so the original person that dug the 9, he is responsible. Halacha Yud Gimel. Chafer Harishin Bear Amuk, Ubo Achrim Verchive V'Nafel L'Techi Sherumes. So the Rishon already made a bear which was Yeshbe K'dei Lahamas. Now the second one went and he made the bear wider. Now the din is, let's Behemshech will learn that if Lepel, the share fell in from that part where this new person made it wider, so it could be that if he wouldn't have made it wider, the share wouldn't have fallen in. The share fell in because he fell in from the side where before that there wasn't a bear. The second person made it wider. So then for sure the second person is responsible. But what happens if the share falls in not from the place where he made it wider, from the place in the bear which originally there was a bear? So here it depends how the share dies. If the share dies, machmas chavota, so even though the share dies in a place where there was originally the bear anyways, so then the din is that the second one is responsible. Masha'inkin, if he dies, machmas hevel, so then the second one is not responsible because the second one wasn't Mesa hevel. Let's learn inside. Halacha Yud Gimel. Chafer Harishin Bear Amik, he was already Chafer a Bear Amik, which was Yeshbe Kedei Lahamas. Now Ubo Achrin V'Hirchive, the second one came and made the bear wider, and V'Nafel L'Techi Sheru Mes, and a share died there. So I say, Im machmas havli mes, if the share died because of the hevel, now the second one wasn't really mace of hevel. Fakir, there's less hevel. If the bear is wider, there's less hevel. And also, like we learned Behemshech, that this bear, the place where the share fell in, he would have fallen in anyways. So then is har achrim potter shahari miyat hevel. He was the memayed the hevel, and we're adding also, like we'll see Behemshech, that he didn't fall where he made it. In other words, it fell in the place where the original was. So as far as his misa was concerned, this second person didn't add anything to his misa. He died from hevel. He didn't add anything to the hevel, and he didn't add anything to the falling because it fell in a place where it would have fallen regardless. Because lepel, it fell in the bear which was of the original bear. However, the machmas chavati mes, if this share now fell in machmas chavate, is over here is a achrin chayv. Why? Sharehu hikriv hezik berzel. Now these words sharehu hikriv hezik berzel lechura you have to explain. Now let's just go behemshach v'chein im nafal asher me'esi atzad shehirchiv ha'achrin is a achrin chayv. Sharehu hikriv hezik berzel aval pishem es menavel. However, v'iman atzad shechofer harishin nafal, so then harishin chayv shezeh achrin miyat heavily. So we see clearly. The halach is azay. A person, there was a bear originally which had kedei lahamas. Now this other person came and made it wider, the bear. So he didn't really add to the hevel, but he added a place where over there the chavata could happen. So the din is, you have to understand the din. The din is just like we learned before, that when you had a bear of 9, and lepel you added the 10, so you become the bala bear. So over here also, since you're adding a place in this bear, where over there could be a chavata, there could be a place, a new place in the bear where there could be a chavata. See, even though lepel, the share died as a result of the bear, it fell in on the side of the bear which was there originally. In other words, you made the bear wider. So if it would have fallen on the other side, so then no, that's understandable. But over here, lepel, it fell in from the other side. Everything that happened would have happened regardless if the second one would have come. But since the second one came and he made a bear which has more of a chance of chavata, he has more of a chance of chavata, so he becomes the bala bear. When the share died from the chavata. So even though it died from the chavata of the first bala bear, but since the second bala bear made a wider place of a potential chavata, so he becomes responsible, which you have to understand why. B'medvar mamurim, if the share died from a chavata, masha'enken, if the share died from hevel, so he b'chlal didn't add to the hevel over here. He didn't add to the hevel. Fakir, he made the hevel less. So if it died from the white, in other words, it fell from the place where the new person added, so then the new person is responsible, because if not for him, the share wouldn't have fallen in. But if it fell in from the other side, so it would have fallen in anyways, and lepel, and it died from hevel, and the second one didn't add to the hevel, so therefore the second one is not responsible. It needs further explanation, but that's the nakuda. The nakuda's advarim is that when a person adds to a bear, and he makes the bear wider. So if it falls in from that place where he made it wider, he's always responsible. If he falls in from the side where it was there originally, so it depends. If he dies from chavata, so then the person that made it wider is responsible, because lepel, he made it wider, and therefore there was more place for chavata. Masha'enken, if it dies from hevel, and it falls in from the place where it was there originally, and the second person didn't really add to the hevel, so then the second person is not responsible. That's the halacha yud gimel. Halacha yud dalet. Bear shechiev of teira, afilo lemesa behema elo mehavle. Even if the behema didn't die from the chavat, it died from the hevel. Ve'en tzarich lema mesa mechavati. If it died from the chavati, for sure the bala bear is chayiv. Lefichach im hoya oy mekaber kirach. But since we're saying it could die either from the hevel or from the chavata. If lepel the emekaber was kirach, is ainly hevel. It has no hevel, because hevel is only because it's deeper than it is white. The imle nech betoham behema, lepel, the behema didn't get a bank, because lepel there were things there that made it soft, so the behema didn't get banked. And lepel there was no hevel because it was omke kirachbe. And lepel umesa behema, the behema did end up dying. So you have a behema fell into a bear. It didn't die from the chavata, and lepel there was no hevel because it was rachbe ka'omke. So the din is, so the bala bear is potter. Haya omke yeser al rachbe, so then it's yesh lehevel, and v'meisa behema chayiv av bishale nechbeta bekarkayisa, because we are nemon that it dies from the hevel. So b'kitzer, if you have a bear, and that bear is omke kirachbe, so we know that there's no hevel, and a lepel there was no chavata, so you're not responsible. Masha'enkin, if omke is more than rachbe, and even if there's no chavata, so we nemon that it must have died from the hevel, and therefore the bala bear is responsible. Halacha tezvav. Asa tail govea b'rshus harabim. A person, rather than making govea b'rshus harabim, he makes a tail, a mound in rshus harabim, which is govea, a mound in rshus harabim, and v'nechbet tabea behema, the behema got banged on it, umesa the behema died. Now some Rishonim learn pshat that it doesn't mean that it got banged on the tail and it died, because then line of community, if it's of the size, we're soon going to see that it's a din of asarat tvachim. Asarat tvachim was a din in the fall, not a din in the bank. So therefore they learned that the pshat is that it means he went onto the mound and he fell off. He went onto the mound and fell off. So just like if a person makes a bear in Rishus Harabim and causes a behemoth to fall down 10 tvachim, so if you make a mound in the Rishus Harabim, the behemoth goes on and then it falls off. So it's also the same din. That's some Rishonim learn. But Lepel for Lashon HaRambam is not like that. The Pashto Lashon HaRambam is not like that. The Rambam is saying that there is a din of banging on this tail, and there's a difference if the tail was 10 tvachim or not. It's a davar mechudish. Halacha tezvav nachamal. Asa tail gavea b'rshus harabim v'nechbet behema. The behema got banged on this tail. Umesa is imhoya gavea asar tvachim. If this tail was 10 tvachim tall, is chayiv l'shalom. V'imhoye pochis me'asara, but if it was less than 10 tvachim tall, is potter al misas habehema, even though we're talking about nechvata. That's talking about b'negei misa. Avalim huzik bilvad. But let's say you got nizik from this tail, which is pachas mi'asara tvachim, is chayav l'shalom nezik shalom. V'afilu b'tail gavei kolshu. Even if we're not talking about, it's not 10 tvachim tall. It's very small. A b'chafir kolshu, or it's not deep at all. It's very, very shallow. Shah nezik b'kolshu davar masiv yadua. To have a nezik even b'kolshu is davar masiv yadua. Abeveina misa b'kolshu mitzuya. And therefore, vaharehu k'meyenis, the fact that it happened is considered like an enis. No, you weren't expecting it to happen, and therefore you're puzzled. I'm just being masbeh that for someone to die, for a behemoth to die in less than 10 tvachim, or in depth, or a tail that's less than 10 tvachim tall, is very unusual. Is davar misa b'kol shum mitzuya, and it's unusual, and therefore it's considered k'meyenis. But for it to be nizik in less than 10 tvachim, that's usual, and therefore you're responsible. Halacha tezayin v'chein eini chayav al misas habehema bebeir el chavitose batel elim hoisa habehema ktana oy chareshes, actually deaf, oy sheita, or knows a sheita biyachas to other behemoths, a summa, or blind, a shenafla balayla. So in these cases, when the behemoth dies in a bear, that's when the bala bear is responsible. Again, the behemoth was a ktana, or a chareshes, a sheita, or a summa, a shenafel balayla. Avalim hoise pikachas, it was a behemoth which was a pikachas, and v'nafla bayem umesa, it wasn't balayla, it was a pikachas. So the behemoth should have really normally been looking out to see for bears not to fall into a bear that it could die in. So then it's potter shezek me'enos. So if a behemoth falls into a bear, a behemoth pikachas, and it's bayem, and it dies, you're potter, because you don't expect the behemoth to fall in. So this whole din that a behemoth falling into a bear, you're chayiv, if it dies, is only if it was in a situation where you don't expect the behemoth to be watching. Because the behemoth was a chareshes, it was a sheita, it was a ktana, it was a summa, it was balayla, so then you're not expecting the behemoth to watch. So therefore that's not expected to happen. So it's kilo like an oinus. V'chein, Nachadin, and nafel leteche odom umes, if a person dies, afilo hoya summa, ishnafel balayla, so ben shoye ben chen, oyevet, that's there is a potter. So that's a different din. This din that a balaber is potter for Nizkei Odom is because there's a special din. There's a din that a behema which kills a odom, so the bala behema has to pay kofer. There's a special din. A behema kills the odom, the bala behema has to pay kofer. Masha'inkin, that din doesn't apply to a bear. A bear is potter on misas odom. There's no din of kofer of an odom, and al that is it. There's no din of the shleish mishalever on an odom. However, v'himhuzek be'odom, if a person fell into a bear and there was a nezek, or a behema pikachas fell into a bear and a nezek, so Be'emes again it's two dinim. In other words, a person b'chalal doesn't watch out for bears. A person normally doesn't watch out for bears. So therefore, if a person falls into a bear and is huzak, the person is responsible. The bala bear is responsible. The reason why he's not responsible if the person dies is because there's no chi of kofer for a bear. The chi of kofer for a person that dies doesn't apply to a bear. So therefore, if a person dies in a bear, so the bala bear is potter. If a person is huzak in the bear, the bala bear is chayiv. Now, b'negei behema, the reason why if he dies in the bear, the bala bear is potter, is because he's not expecting the behema to fall into the bear and die. Masha'inkin, the behema is taka nizer from big mechshelas, but from small mechshelas is not nizer, and therefore, for a behema to fall into a bear and hurt himself, that's regular. So therefore, v'mhuzik behod, behema pikachas, is chayav nezik shalom k'misha b'yan. Allah yudzay. Nafal leteche sher psuli hamukdoshim umes. So the din is ariza potter. Shenemar, it's a special din. It's exeris hakosov. It says v'hames yalei that the nizik keeps the mess. Misha mes shalei abiyotze zeh shu aser bano v'dinei she yikover. In other words, a mes psuli hamukdoshim, a psul hamukdoshim you're allowed to eat. Psul hamukdoshim is a kachim that got a mum and you were paid it, so you're allowed to eat it, but you're not allowed to be meichelit l'klovim. Ein meichelit l'klovim. So now when it dies in a bear, so obviously you can't eat it because it didn't have shchita. So the only thing you could do is lachil l'klovim. You're not allowed to. So Mela, so there's no hana from the nevela. So there's a special din. So exeris hakosim. that when are you chayiv for Nizkei Asher, only a share which which someone could be nana from the Nevel. Halacha Yudches. Hoya Chefer Beber, V'nafla Behema B'techa Ber, Mikela Chafira. So the behemoth didn't fall into the bear naturally. It fell in as a result of the Chfira Umesa. So Im Nafla Milfana knows it heard this Chfira and it got a little shocked, and therefore it fell Milfana, is Chayiv, because that's called Derech Nefila, it fell. However, Machareh, it fell backwards, and as a result of that, it fell into the bear, and it was like in front of the bear, and it fell backwards, and that's how it got into the bear. And as a result of that is Nafla, Umesa is Potter. Shnema v'Nafal, we learn it has to be v'Nafal Shamasher Chamer. So we learn now, Sheipul Derech Nefila. So Derech Nefila is frontwards and not backwards. Now, Nafla l'faneh Mikela Chvira Chutz Lebeir Umesa. Lepel, it fell. But in the original case was it fell into the bear. Over here, the person was digging the bear, and as a result of digging the bear, the behemoth fell forward, but it didn't fall forward into the bear. It fell outside the bear, and it died outside the bear. From the fall, it died outside the bear, or maybe on the tip of the bear, but not in the bear. It didn't fall into the bear. So the din is ein bezin mechayv, and they say bezin is not mechayv because it wasn't v'nafel shom sheir chamer. However, v'mtafas hanizik is mitzim biyadi, because since it was sof kol sof, it was derech nefila. That's talking about if it was derech nefila. Lefonav. However, v'im nafla lachireh chutz lebeir umeisei huska is balaber potter. There's no din tfisa because over there it's absolutely potter. If nafla lachireh chutz lebeir umeisei huska is potter. Halacha yutes sher shedachav behema l'teicha beir umeisa. You have a share that pushes another share into a bear and it dies. So there's two shutfim in this hezek. Is imud, if the share that pushed the share in was a mud, is bala bear mishalem mechzu, bala share mechzu. The two, both of them are responsible, and therefore they divide the hezek. Each one did half. However, v'im tamu, if the share that pushes the share in was a tam, is bala share mishalem revia megufe. In other words, we look at it, the bala share did half of the nezek, and the bala bear did half of the nezek. Now, when the bala share does a hezek, so since he's a tam, so he only pays half of the hezek that he did. So he did half of the hezek. Itaka did half of the hezek, but he only pays half of what he did. So mainly he only pays a quarter of the hezek, and he pays migufe. However, the bala bear is mishalim shleisha chalakim. He has to pay the other 3/4 min hayafish ben chasav from the yafish ben chasav. There's no din of migufe by a bala bear. Why? Why? Shabala nevela ema lebala bear pchas nevela zu yeshli etzlecha. In other words, I have a nevela lying in your bear, and this is what it's worth less. This is what it's worth less. Now, what do you mean it's in my bear? Leper, was this a behemoth that was expected to fall into the bear? She said, afal pi shehigdela upi kachas, and normally the bala bear shouldn't be responsible. But since if the bear would have fallen in on its own, so then the bala bear is not responsible. So that causes hareze commissionafel balayla. So just like the bala bear is responsible, what happens if it falls in at night? If it falls in by day, he's not responsible. But if it falls in at night, he is responsible. So al that when it falls in, when another share pushes it in, so it's normal for it to fall. So then the bala bear becomes responsible, even though it only fell because of the other share. Abalapel, he made a bear, and whenever the share falls in, when the share is expected to fall in, even though it fell in because of another share, so then the bala bear becomes responsible, just like he would be responsible at night. So Mela, so you're responsible. The Baal Hasher that died says to the Baal Bear, you're responsible. Kol shani yochel lehetzi mi Baal Hasher ani meitzi. In other words, I can get from him a quarter. I can't get from him more than a quarter. V'hashar atachayev l'shalme, and the rest you have to chayev l'shalme, which is really hard to understand because l'chura, if we say that the Baal Hasher only has to pay a quarter, why? Because we say that he only did half of the damage. So l'chura, the Baal HaBeir also did half of the damage. So how can you take from him more than half? L'chura, if the Baal HaSher did only half, and that's why you're taking from a quarter, so the Baal HaBeir only did a half. So what's this idea that going to the Baal HaBeir and taking from him more than a half? So that they bring from a Tesvis that also, that's a din d'Rabbanan. The Ba'amah, since the share finds itself in the bear, so therefore the Baal HaBeir becomes responsible for the whole share. Even though Ba'amah Sitak only did a half. It's like a din d'Rabbanan. Halacha Chof. So you put an Evan al pi haber, ubo asher, v'niskel bo, v'nofel lebeir umes. So there's two people responsible. The bear is responsible because the pale got hurt in that bear. But the Baal Evan is responsible because he tripped because of that Evan. So the din is Maniachas or Evan Mishalim Mechza, or Baal Haber is Mechza. V'chein, Sher Shel Hedjed V'Shel Psulei HaMukdoshim Shenochel Keheded. Now the Rambam says Psulei HaMukdoshim, it's talking about a case that the Sher of Psulei HaMukdoshim is not responsible. We're talking about a Psulei HaMukdoshim that wasn't Nifta. We learned before that a Psulei HaMukdoshim is Nifta, so there's no din of that's Sher Yeu, because he becomes Shel Chulin. So we have to be talking about a Psulei HaMukdoshim, and L'churi we also have to be talking about that a Psulei HaMukdoshim of Kodesh Kadoshim, because if it's Kodesh Kalim, so even if it's not Psulei HaMukdoshim, you're Chayev, because it's considered a Yeu. So the question is, what is that Rambam talking about Psulei HaMukdoshim? L'churi could be talking about Hekdesh Mamish. I'll call upon him, V'chein Sher Shel Hedjed, V'Shel Psulei HaMukdoshim Shenochel Ke'echad. Is im tam hu zeh shel hedjed? If the hedjed is a tam, so then is mishalim chotzi nezik. He pays the chotzi nezik of the whole nezik. Whereas you assess the whole nezik, and from the hedjed you take from the tam chotzi nezik. The muad nezik shalim. Shanizik emole kol shuchal eitzi mizeh oitzi. I'm going to take out everything that I could from you because you're the mazik. V'hashar mimcha. Whatever I can take out from the other one, I'll take out. V'hashar mimcha. V'zeh heil v'hegdish hu potter zata t'shalom v'yakil. So over here, from this halach, it sounds like that everyone is responsible for everything. In other words, both mazikim are responsible for everything, and therefore I'm going to take everything from you. If I can't take from him, I'll take from you. So l'chura b'negeh the bear, when the share pushed the share into the bear, so l'chura also we say the bear is responsible for everything. Whatever you can get from the share, you get from the share. L'chura, and l'pel over there, the Rambam said that the reason is because p'chas nevela zu yashetz l'cha. It's like it's a special din. Since the nevel is in the bear, so p'chas nevel zu yashetz l'cha, and therefore you're responsible. And we mentioned before that it's only a din d'Rabbanan. So the Mefarshim explain, it brings the Agoyis Maimoni and the Yam Shoshlema, they say that pshat is when you have a share in a bear, so it's clearly that both of them did the hezek. Mashenk, when you have two shvarim doing the hezek, so each one could have maybe done the hezek himself. So therefore, each one becomes fully responsible. That's how they explain pshat in this Rambam. Although the Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam seems to be saying that since lepel, there could be a hezek that they couldn't both do together. I'll call upon him